now. Before you heard the sound. Now.
I haven't talked to you face to face in a while, so I wanted to come up today.
Good.
There's sort of a question here. It's not completely formed.
Yeah.
It's kind of a feeling.
Mm.
Um, so I've been inquiring. I've been doing been saying, can you stop being?
Yes.
And can I be unaware? And
Mm.
those have just been really helpful because it's not about right or wrong or where do I need to go next. It's just
Yes.
simple like that.
Yes.
And that's been really nice. And then just organically, there's been a question that comes up whenever there's a thought. Instead of referring to myself as I, it's consciousness.
Mm. 1 second. Let
Um,
me mute everyone.
sure. So I guess the question came up of like with awakening, how much of it is there's like finding balance of between trying and just
Mm.
being, and it's like
Mm.
trying to figure out where mind and trying falls into that. Like, there's this whole teaching of let things be, things happen by themselves,
Mm.
and it's all about letting go of trying in mind. But
Mm.
then there's another side of it that says this needs to be the only thing that you want in life.
Mm.
And so I guess I'm just trying to find, is there an effort and a desire for the one and only truth that it needs to be,
Mm.
which is already here? Or
Mm.
is it more of a letting go of that so that
Mm.
things can be,
Yes.
I guess?
Yes. Yes. I see. Okay, this is a good place to start. So, and this continues in a way the theme from last time also, where really I want to emphasize again and again that there is no how to, no, and there is no template as to how to. Like we all we can do is moment to moment follow our intuition, follow our intuitive guidance, but there is no real template which we can say, okay, now because you're really seeking the ultimate reality, this is what you should be like. And because the problem with that instruction would be what? The problem with that instruction would be that it is still emphasizing the false identity to be your reality, and then re-emphasizing that every time, while seeming to motivate or to push us into the greater reality. You see, so if I was to say that, okay, this is what you must do now that you are a spiritual seeker, then that will still contain the protagonist of you as somebody, as an individual who now has a way to behave or to live now as a spiritual seeker. And every time you reinforce that, saying that this is what I'm meant to do now, it can reinforce the identity, you see. And that is why even when you speak to masters, the instructions can seem very contradictory, because like Guruji very beautifully said one time, he's not answering the question really, he's just answering the questioner. And what that means is that what conditioned them, that may be apparent at that point, you see, that position has to be discarded one way or the other. And um, and that is what the masters do. So if the masters notice that you maybe have a particular condition which is like this, they will try to plug that out by saying something. If the condition is the opposite, they may try to plug that out by saying the opposite of what they would have said otherwise. And that is why this is a common complaint amongst most spiritual seekers, saying that why can't my master just tell me and then just not contradict that ever in terms of what I'm supposed to do. You see, but it just can't happen that way. Just because the mind can so easily take positions either way, the words that are used to disinfect you from those positions also can then be either way. You see, but then what then happens is that we come to a point where we don't need to communicate in that way, you see, because you're mostly able to see through most of the positions and the shapes that the mind is trying to create, you see. So even in hearing this, there's a subtle shape. Something went in my eye, I'm sorry. So seems to be you see. So So depending on where that speck of dust is, you see, that is the that is where you have to blow into and blow it out. No? So so it cannot be a standard cookie cutter sort of response, and that I completely understand the frustration that comes along with hearing something like that, because it just feels like, but then I'm lost. I go to a teacher so that he can guide me in terms of what to do. No, but the teacher sometimes says XX, sometimes he says YY, sometimes he says up, sometimes he says down. You see, so it can seem very confusing, and I don't really have a way. So, but that's how it is, because the teacher does not want you to get addicted to a newer set of lies, which are spiritual concepts. It is not like the principle of moving up is not what is being applied here. No? So we spoke about this, where you're willing to let go of an existing concept if you're given a better sounding concept, and especially if the benefits sound great. But this kind of satsang is more difficult because here nothing is on offer. You see, so what can I really do? You see, will I find the truth? You see, so and even when the conclusive answers are there, soon they will neutralize each other, and that seems to be a disadvantage or a frustration. But actually, it's a great help, because we learn how to not rely on conceptual knowledge, and we allow this life, which is central. We allow this life, which is central to our very being as consciousness, to unfold itself in the most organic way. You see, and you're doing it very well. But sometimes the mind presents conundrums to us and puzzles to us, saying, on one hand, on the other hand, you see. So what does it all actually mean? Just forget about it.
Yeah.
You see? How am I supposed to be? But your being actually needs no support or assistance from a conceptual position. You see, in fact, the only thing that can do is create a box or a mold in which then life has to unfold. You see, and what is happening in satsang is that the invitation is to throw away all these molds, all these shapes. You see, and see how you exist, how your existence still continues to manifest in the most beautiful way, you see, and not to have to direct it so much in terms of the hows and the whens, you see. So so what should your position be? Open and empty, you see. But what if sometimes you're sitting and going om, eh? And other times you're going, um, who am I? What is this? Am I aware now? You see? Other times you're just ram. You see? Other times you're just watching a TV show. It doesn't have to be only spiritual stuff, whatever it is. No, but it is not that consciousness is ever going to make a mistake, or something is better or something is worse. In reality, You see, it is just what is showing up on the screen of consciousness, which can only trouble us or limit us, or consciousness itself can seem to get limited by that. Only by referring to our conditions about what is showing up and try to get a grasp or a handle on them. No? You see, now what interpret something which you don't already have a condition about. Okay, let me make it simpler. It did not come across very well. So this form is in on the computer in front of you. You see, now if you did not have the molds, which was man, teacher, Ananta, Guruji, all these father, all these molds. You see, and you were finding yourself unable to fit this in any mold. How would you do with that?
I wouldn't. I mean, there would be nothing to say about it. It would just be like if there
Yes.
was no thought or idea about you or about form.
Yes, yes. So, like I call it pure perception. The pure perception will still continue, but it is empty of the limitations or the shapes or the molds from the mind saying, "This is the man. He is my master. He is telling me something." You see, all that we are empty of that, and that is a great lesson about life. You see, because life is just unfolding in the most beautiful way. Our conditions, which are our how to's and when to's and well done or badly done, all of those conditions actually just get in the way. They just limit our natural existence, our organic being. You see? So that's why I hope now we can meet at this point where really we can see through at a layer, you see, which is deeper than the context of the question itself. You see, because we are now looking at the subtext itself, which is about the how tos and feeling helpless if I don't know how to deal with the situation. You see, and questioning the idea of not knowing how to is worse than knowing how to. You see, maybe not knowing how to is better. We don't even know that. You see, I hope all of you are with me, and the new ones may be struggling a bit, but I'm happy to talk to you as well. But this is important to say. Otherwise, what will happen is that we will seem to resolve everything at a micro level, no? At a micro level, one problem at a time. But once we can start chopping it at the subtext, you see, what is the proposition really? The proposition really is that I don't know then how to be spiritual. For example, it's not necessarily what the condition that you were buying into, but suppose the subtext is how can I be the right spiritual seeker? You see, but you're not going to be the spiritual seeker. You see, so the how-to manual is for the one who doesn't exist. You see, and the frustrations are of the same one, or even the conclusions or the resolutions are of the same one.
Yeah.
You see, because who is the
Yeah.
protagonist even in that dilemma or that conundrum?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So the absence of that shape is freedom.
Okay. Yeah, that's clear. And
Good.
yeah, I'm yeah. I see that it's still an idea that I want to know. Is that like it's even though it's a spiritual idea, it's still a conditioning. It's still something that I want to grasp, and yeah, that's clear. And it's still there, but I hear what you're saying.
Yes, yes. But
Okay.
when we say
Hmm.
it is there. What does that mean actually? What do we mean it is there?
The desire, the urge,
Okay,
kind of a tightness
okay. So let's identify it. Can we identify it here and now? Where is it?
in the chest where most things are.
You see, now now that perception, which could be like a constriction or some just some pulsation, Then what is that saying? Organically, just the perception itself.
Just is.
You see?
It's not
So
saying anything.
that's very good. So if you just look at that, you see, and not like we don't have to fixate our attention on it or make a practice out of it, but if you just look at that and don't succumb to the need to conclude, you see, then you will meet at a point where you will identify all the need to know, all the need to grasp, which is actually like a need to limit ourselves, or a need to attack ourselves, or a need to really suffer, which we actually, the mind convinces us that this actually is going to help us. You see, the more we grasp, the better off we will be. You see, so if you can meet it at the seeming discomfort or wobbliness level, you see, of not knowing and allowing ourselves to be not conclusive, you see, then you strike it at the root. You see, because it is at the substratum of all grasping. No? This kind of, but I'm still a bit incomplete. I'm still a bit. Am I completely clear about this? And it's all uh, pushing. It's a mental push towards sort of a mental resolution, a conclusiveness, which actually is just the birthing ground for new confusion. So, like we said, then there's a cycle of the spiritual seeker is mostly confusion, confusion, conclusion, conclusion, confusion, confusion. So it's the same thing, confusion. Then you hear some words in satsang and you feel like, thank you, that got resolved. It became a conclusion. But those fresh conclusions then become the new confusion. You see, so that's why this journey seems so circular and endless. And most of us have been on this for so long in this sort of merry-go-round way, where we feel like, oh, this is my final question. No, so many times we feel that I felt that so many times, and then I would hear a satsang or I would hear any master speaking. I feel like, oh, I had this confusion for so long. Thank you, all done now. But then the same thing that the master said, tomorrow will become the source of new confusion. But you said like this, but how can it be like that? You see? So it becomes a source of fresh confusion. You see, so what happens is that the world's idea of progressive knowledge cannot work here in satsang. No? You see, because we've progressed from one level to the next level to the third level, and in most forms of spirituality or most sects of spirituality also, there is that kind of progressive sort of systems available till a particular point where everything has to be chopped away. But in what we call direct satsang, you see, it's just very direct, and the idea is not to put you in a progressively better place. You see, it is to just shake you out of every place that you can possibly imagine yourself to be. So, so that's the main idea. You see? So, so more and more, especially for those who've been with me for a bit now, uh, we must we must be able to look at it at this level and say, what is this really about? Is it that I'll hear an answer, blah 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 blee blee blue blah blee blah blah, and I will store that and say, yes, this is my mantra for life now. You see, this is what I'm supposed to do. That cannot be it. You see, the glory of God and the light of the self cannot be that limited that we will be able to capture it in that way. Provisionally, of course, and especially for those who are new, we can provide some tips and answers and solutions. You see, but ultimately, we must just come to a point where we are not afraid to meet our own nakedness in a full and open and innocent way. You see, and you identified it very well, because this is the kind of wobbliness that I speak about, that many times I just feel like, but it's still a bit shaky here. So what is he saying, left or right? Not really saying anything. In fact, many of you may look back at the end of satsang and say, what did he really say it? You- so So I can understand that predicament, but that's the whole feeling. If you feel like at the end of satsang you didn't really understand much, but hopefully you felt like you had a bath on the inside, then that is good enough. And the second one is also my problem, nothing to do with any of you. So this is for me to do, not for any of you to feel like, oh, I don't feel so good today. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention. It's not talking about any of that stuff. So it's just like this. So don't meet me at a level where answers, you see, define so much now. You see, it is the essence of your pure being, which we are now cleaning up fully, so that you can fully shine in this unobstructed way, instead of giving you fresh dust. Maybe we are not replacing dust with glitter or something. So that can be the spiritual idea, no? That I had this worldly dust, now I'm going to be full of spiritual glitter or something, but that is not it. So because at your core, at your center, at your very essence is the purest light of the universe. In fact, it is the light in which the whole world is perceived. You see? So no words can amplify that. So at best, the delusion that is created by words is then negated by words. It's like poison cutting poison. So if you did not have a how-to for anything, and this is for everyone, if you did not have a how-to manual, how to live, you see, most of us, since we've been 2.5, 3 years old, we've been on this search for how to, you see. And whether you're 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, 80 years old, 100 years old, if you talk to most people, you see, you will say, I still haven't figured out, how to live. And even the ones then who feel like they have figured out how to live, they are more deluded. You see? So there's dissatisfaction because I haven't figured out how to live, and there's greater suffering because when we become too rigid about our ideas of how to live, you see, then that makes us suffer a lot, because life shows us all colors and shapes and sizes. So our ideas are bound to get crushed by life, and that feels like it is suffering more. So the ones, and we met so many in our lives, we come across people and we see the ones who are really, you see, really certain about things that we cannot be certain about. You see, they end up then trying to hold it up for a bit, but eventually end up crumbling again, again under the weight of their own notions. You see, so as a spiritual guide, and some of you call me father and things, so I would never give my children any more burden. You see, the provisional concepts that are here in satsang are just so that they can do a clean-up job of what is there. But all of you can notice this now, even right now, that life is appearing as pure perception. You see, do you need to mold it in a mental shape?
No.
You see, and when we are not able to mold it in a mental shape, sometimes this feeling of wobbliness comes, and it is good to meet it empty. You see, good to recognize that yes, it is natural for it to come. If it doesn't come, no worries, but for many it will come. You see, and it's fine. You see, and it sort of is a habit. It is the instigator of the habit to make meaning, conceptual meaning, about what is showing up. You see, and once we see it for what it is, then we can meet it at that level and together discard this. So I'm just showing you that it is sorry, I'm just going rambling on and on, but it's a good start to satsang. I'm just showing you how much of a supreme possibility it is to live open and empty, you see, without needing to grasp on to any way of living or any how to of life. You see? So as we investigate more and more, you will find that what is this really about? If we are able to ask ourselves this question, what is this really about? You see, is it about a me? You see, is it that a non-existent entity wants to figure out how to swim in this lake? You see, it's not possible. You see, so Guruji uses this beautiful example. He says, "You be the cow that jumped over the moon. No? You be the cow that jumped over the moon." But in our trying, we cannot do it. You see, can anyone try and jump over the moon? Like I'm going to take a really long run up, and I'm going to come like from 100 meters running, really long run up, and then really just take off and jump over the moon. You see, so in our trying, we cannot do it. Then the mind says, okay, now let me try the opposite approach. Let me not try at all. You see, I'm just going to sit here. If the moon wants to come under me, then it can come, and you see, it's done with this. You see, but that is also trying without trying. No? Like we are trying to do it by not trying. That is still trying. So, we cannot fool our way out of this. You see, so either position that we take, we cannot jump. You see, but the when we are absent of any position, you see, we are already much beyond the moon. I know I'm taking the metaphor really far, but we are much beyond the leap. You see, but we cannot do it in our trying, and we cannot do it in our not trying. You see, and it is the intellect which has these opposites. So, as I keep reiterating, we have to let go of both ends of the intellect. You see, both ends of the intellect, because all the positions that it can propose that you take belong to somebody who doesn't exist.
Hmm. Yeah.
You see? And as you continue to contemplate on can I stop being? Am I aware now? You're doing the inquiries. So you will see that these positions will not seem as compelling as they were in the past. You see, because you notice that who is it talking about? Who is it talking about? Is it talking to this beingness? You see, which is limitless already and has nowhere to go. In fact, everything appears within itself. Or is it talking to that which is aware even of being? You see, it cannot apply to any of those. You see? So, the mind's non-existent problems or propositions of problems for the one that doesn't exist will no longer seem as compelling now.
Thank you.
So welcome, so welcome. Is it unfair to those who ask short questions and they have to do such a long transcript because I go on? We can make a simpler rule for that.
No, I'm happy to do it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Actually, this one itself, we can just have a small booklet or something just out of this, because it covers all this doership and conceptual position and a lot of topics that we talk about. Thank you, thank you.